Hello, friends. Today I'm going to be reading for you a fall book, or another word for fall called autumn. And this book is called Pete the Cat Falling for Autumn. Like, there's Pete and his friends on a hayride. It is the first day of fall, and Pete the Cat is feeling blue. I like summer better, he says. In summer, I can swim and surf and play at the beach. Maybe you just need to remind yourself of all the things you love about autumn, Mom suggests. Says Pete. I'll try. Pete finds Grandma in the kitchen. She's baking delicious pumpkin pies. The whole house smells sweet and spicy. Pete loves helping Grandma bake pumpkin pie, but he loves eating it even more. After the baking is done, Pete picks a squat orange pumpkin from the counter and slips it into his backpack as a souvenir. Next, Pete heads to the town corn maze. Pete and his friends wander through the long, twisty paths made of tall corn stalks. The best part of the corn maze is getting lost and having to start over again. As he leaves, Pete plucks a golden corn cob from the maze and places it inside his backpack. Then Pete visits Grandpa, who is knitting on the porch. Grandpa helps Pete use the knitting needles to knit the yarn into cool patterns. Look, Grandpa and Pete made a pattern. Together, Pete and Grandpa make a long, cozy scarf for Pete to wear. Why would he need a scarf? Yeah, in the autumn or the fall, it gets cooler outside, right? So Pete needs to stay warm. When they're done, Pete chooses a little ball of leftover yarn and places it inside his backpack. I wonder what Pete's gonna do with pumpkin, corn on the cob, yarn. He's collecting all these things in his bag. Next, Pete goes to the hayride at the park. Pete, Bob, Mom, Dad, and Grandpa all pile into a wagon filled with hay. They go on a bumpy wagon ride around the park. Woohoo! Pete shouts. At the end of the ride, Pete grabs a handful of sweet-smelling hay from the wagon and stuffs it into his backpack. Oh, look, he's adding hay now. Pete heads over to the apple orchard where he and Callie go apple picking. They eat sweet apple donuts and drink hot apple cider and fill their buckets with apples of all different shapes and cider. The apple cider is making Mrs. Fontenot want some apple cider. They find apples of all different shapes and sizes. Apple cider, apple donuts. Boy, don't those sound yummy. Before he leaves, Pete chooses a round red apple and drops it into his backpack. His backpack is getting pretty full. Next, Pete stops by the park. He plays touch football with Bob and their friends. Pete scores a touchdown and everyone cheers. After the game, Pete grabs Bob's football and stuffs it into his backpack. It barely fits. Bob won't mind if I borrow this, Pete says. Did you know that we start football in the fall or the autumn? And it's football season. Maybe you like football. Finally, Pete heads back home, but he stops in his front yard, which is covered with bright leaves falling from the trees. Pete helps his dad rake the leaves into big, colorful mounds. Then Pete runs and jumps into all the leaf piles. Jumping into big piles of leaves is so much fun. If you have never tried it before, you should sometime. Mrs. Fontenot used to do that when she was a kid. After he's done jumping, Pete picks a bunch of red and gold and orange leaves and stuffs them into his backpack. What do you think he's gonna make with everything in his backpack? See if we can find out. Pete's backpack is bursting with fall souvenirs. He can't wait to show Mom. I love autumn, Pete says. Wonderful, says Mom. You know, these would make great decorations for Thanksgiving. Oh, so Pete brought them to show Mom his favorite things about fall. But Pete helps his mom fill a basket with all of his mementos. They place the basket at the center of the table. You did a great job, Pete, says Mom. It's beautiful, says Dad. Is that my football? Asks Bob. Just then, the doorbell rings. They made a cornucopia. That's what that's called. It's a beautiful Thanksgiving decoration. The Thanksgiving guests are here. All of Pete's family and friends gather around the dining room table. They tell stories and laugh at jokes while they eat. Everyone is having a great time. Pete looks around the table and smiles. He loves lots of things about autumn, but Pete knows what he loves most all year long. What do you think Pete loves the most all year long? Let's see if you're right. His family and friends. Yes, I agree, Pete. Family and friends are the best. And look, they're sharing pumpkin pie. We're going to be talking about Thanksgiving and about getting together with our family and friends to talk about things we're thankful for. So I want you to think like Pete and think about all the things in the fall that you love to do with your family and friends, or that you love to share with them. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I will see and talk to you all soon.